Hi, everyone. This is Jay Carter. We're back with the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing the attorney Christopher Darden. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, I'm sure when people hear your name, they probably think of a lot of things. You've been a part of so many huge cases, I think, in the spectrum of Black America, but just our legal system in general. So, I know personally, I think I was maybe in the fifth or sixth grade when the O.J. Simpson case came out, and they allowed us to actually watch the case. I still don't understand why they were letting us watch it. So, I went to a really good school, but they allowed us to watch the case. Maybe they thought it was for educational purposes. I don't know. To this day, I don't know why they allowed us to watch it, but they allowed us to watch the case. So that was obviously my first introduction to you. And obviously, since then, you've, you know, gone from prosecution to private practice. And obviously, you're running for a judge in LA, which I know a lot of people are excited about. So we're definitely going to jump into what's been going on with you since private practice and being a prosecutor and a little bit more about your campaign. But before we do that, I make all guests play a round of hot topics. So you are not exempt. So the first topic, our dear DA, Fani Willis, has, of course, charges against former President Donald Trump as it relates to the election. I think most people understand that that's what the charges are, RICO charge with him and some other defendants. And since then, it's been asked that she be recused from the case, removed from the case as the prosecutor, because she had a relationship with I don't want to call it inferior, but someone in her office that was also prosecuting that case. So my question to you is, obviously you've been on both sides, you're on the prosecution side, you're on the defense side. She's obviously a prosecutor, like you've been so many years of your career. If you were in that position, how would you argue that it was not a conflict of interest? And maybe just tell our audience what a conflict of
Well,
interest.
well, I wouldn't be in that position.
Okay.
Uh, I would, I would know better than to hire someone that I was interested in or had a relationship with. And I wouldn't be in that situation because in a case like this, I would have only appointed a lawyer with an extensive criminal practice and history, and he appears to only have a couple of DUIs under his belt as a criminal law attorney. But
Mhm.
but that aside, I just think it's a terrible mistake.
Mhm.
And you know what? When you don't appreciate the media and media intensity and how it can affect a case if you've never been in that media storm. And all of us, myself included, the DA in Atlanta, we're all naive and we underestimate the power of the press and the media and how they can turn things into a real, uh,
Circus,
yeah, a real circus.
to
And,
say
and,
the
and it
least.
has and it has become a circus, unfortunately. I mean,
Yes.
the DA seems to be a very capable person,
Mhm.
capable lawyer.
Yes.
But it is a mistake that should not have been made.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm.
and,
But in
and
terms of the conflict of interest, do you even though it may appear to be improper and a distraction, right? Maybe for that reason she should be removed. But do you think it's a true conflict of interest as it relates to his
well,
charges?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, when is there a conflict of interest on the part of a prosecutor? It is when there are facts or factors or circumstances surrounding the prosecution that may show or prove or imply that the prosecutor is biased,
Hmm.
against the defendant.
Hmm.
And I don't know that, and I don't think that having a relationship with another prosecutor indicates per se a bias against the defendant. I don't think that the DA having a relationship with the special prosecutor somehow indicates that the DA is biased against Donald Trump. But sometimes it's the appearance, an
Right.
appearance of impropriety that might suggest a bias on the part of the prosecution. I don't think we have that either. Now, if the DA had a financial interest in the case or in the outcome of the case, that would be different. That would be different also. In the Simpson case, we were all being offered book deals and all kinds of things, but nobody signed a book deal or
Mm-hmm.
any of that until after the case was over,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because I think that for me and for us, that would have been improper.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but and I hate to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to see it. Um,
Especially when you see someone that's so smart and capable and this
yes,
kind of, stains what she's trying to do. And this is, of everything she's known for, she'll be known for this more than you never want to be known for more about your mistakes versus your accomplishments.
yes,
You don't want
yes,
to be
and
overshadowed by it.
yes, and it's like anything in life. If you stand up to power, if you stand up, if you set standards, if you're different, if you move differently than others, there are always going to be people who want to drag you back into the abyss, who want to drag you down. And it's so disrespectful too in so many ways. For the two of them both to have to get up on the witness stand and testify about their personal, private, intimate history is
Yeah,
it's just about the worst thing that can happen, quite frankly.
I
And
agree.
and it's something for all of us to avoid in the future.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. I think someone will pull this play moving forward and know not to ever even, like you said, even attempt to even get anywhere near a situation like you said. If it doesn't serve anybody else, I think this will be example for attorneys moving forward about having personal relationships in the office, right?
Sure,
So yeah, no,
sure.
I appreciate your perspective on that. Moving from Atlanta to New York, we have celebrity defendant Jonathan Majors, who was a big TV star, Marvel star, Creed star, almost like you said, he did all this great stuff, and in 5 seconds, it was almost taken all away from him
Yeah.
because of the fight he had with his girlfriend. Obviously, you know all about celebrity defendants. So right now, he is attempting to overturn the verdict. So they haven't sent, he was for viewers that are listening, he was found guilty of reckless assault and harassment, the smaller charges, not the higher charges he was charged with. So he wasn't found guilty on everything. But he was found guilty on some of the things. And so, as far as he was concerned, he showed a videotape with him being chased by his aggressor. So I think he thought that was the slam dunk that would allow him to be completely free of this mess. And I think obviously some people agree with him. And so at this point, I mean, he's presented a tape where he's not the aggressor and some additional things. What can you really present, again, on a procedural level to
Well,
overturn a verdict? Like, how much does it take for a judge to say, you know what, this verdict wasn't right? Let's try this case again or dismiss it.
there has to be error committed on someone's part, either on the part of the judge or the
Mm-hmm.
prosecutor, or perhaps even defense counsel. One very strategic and effective approach to getting a conviction set aside is the discovery of new evidence that could not have been discovered before, but which, had it been presented at trial, the outcome of the trial might have been different. That's one way. Another way is if the court gave erroneous jury instructions or
Mm-hmm.
erred in some of its pretrial or motion in limine rulings. If the judge ruled in such a way that it unfairly deprived Mr. Majors of a defense. Another uh, pathway might be if the prosecution withheld exculpatory evidence. They
Mm-hmm.
have a duty under Brady v. Maryland to provide the defense with all the evidence, uh, especially any evidence that might point to innocence. So if the prosecution has gotten caught holding on to exculpatory evidence, that is also a very a fruitful approach to setting aside the conviction. And of course, finally, one could always argue that the evidence is insufficient and that the jury got it wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
the trial judge, prior to sentencing, generally is in a position to rule on that specific issue. It's not an easy uh,
Mm-hmm.
task,
Right.
and convictions are rarely overturned, especially immediately after trial. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough one. And about the video of the alleged victim chasing him,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
the argument that the alleged victim is the aggressor, uh,
Mm-hmm.
you know, One moment you can be the aggressor, and it's true in the criminal law. The next moment you can also be the victim, depending on how events turn out. You can be the aggressor. You can stop your aggression. You can denounce the apparent assault that you were attended or were trying to make, and you can withdraw. And then if your initial so-called victim can become an assailant and then attack you and and it gives you the right to defend yourself. And now the initial victim is now the second assailant, and now he's in
Yeah,
custody for a jury and she
yeah,
isn't. Um,
yeah,
you know, trials are such living, breathing animals. I always tell people, we have a great case. We do. We should win. Yes, we should. Will we? I don't know. I
well,
hope
this
so.
is why they put it in the retainer agreement. We do not guarantee results. I always look at that
Right.
part of even my retainer agreements. I'm like, I cannot guarantee, I can hope and I can present and do my best. But yeah, I think that's why I stayed away from criminal law. I always felt like I would feel guilty if someone got a guilty verdict and I did everything I could do and they still got the guilty verdict. I think I would beat myself up. So never went down that path. But thank God for people like you that have done it. So yeah, yes, thank you for playing this round of hot topics. You answered the questions exactly the way I wanted you to, because I know our audience sometimes bicker
Mhm.
over areas of law. Some know the law a little bit better than others, and so it's always refreshing to get like a real prosecutor, a real criminal defense attorney that's lived it, to give that perspective. So let's jump into your questions because this is actually why we're here. Um, who were you before you became a lawyer? So not law school, not a who were you before? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't really know who you were before.
Well, back in the 70s, if you had asked me that, I would say, well, I was just a ditty from the city. I grew up in Richmond, California, and Northern California, went to public school, one of 8 children. My father was a laborer, my mother, having 8 kids at a young age, stayed home most of our childhood. And, I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. Me and my sisters were the first in our family, the first generation to go to college. Um, so, I was just a kid from Richmond, just a ditty
Just
from
a
the
ditty.
city.
Okay. So how did the kid that's just a ditty say, I'm gonna go to law school? What made you, was there a moment? Was there a mentor? What happened when you said, okay, I'm gonna go to law school? Because it's expensive
Well,
and it's hard. So
I was confused and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was confused about everything going on around me. It's 1974, when I graduated from high school, but around 1972, the Vietnam War is about to end. And I'm watching my big brother's friends come back from Vietnam with PTSD, as amputees, and the like. And I'm just, you know, the world is a mess. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. And um, I've been reading books, you know. I read lots and lots of books when I was young and when I was a teenager. And I started to, read about the FBI. And I started to read true crime. And at the time, there were political trials going on, or that had just gone on, involving Black Panthers and militants and Angela Davis and all of these trials. And I would see the lawyers. I would see Melvin Belli. I would see these lawyers who represented the militants, who represented the civil rights leaders, who represented those that got on those buses and trains and went down south. Uh, I'm seeing all of these people in books and news, and I came to admire the lawyers.
mm,
Uh, they were more than just lawyers. They were activists. They were saviors, in a way, and I wanted to be like them. I
mhm.
wanted to be like them.
Interesting, interesting. You don't look a day past 45. So when you say being, I'm like, is that, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. No, that's really interesting that, like you said, sometimes it's some people naturally just like to argue or mediate and always like, oh, I've always wanted to be a lawyer, but sometimes it be something in your environment that is that pivoting turn. Um, when you get to law school, what is your favorite law school class?
Well, my favorite law school class is probably a tie, and this is going to be a little strange, a little different.
Okay.
Evidence,
That's not
and
strange.
and
Yeah.
land use. Evidence and land use.
Hmm.
Urban
Interesting.
planning.
Huh.
The law surrounding urban planning and land and real estate. I was really fascinated by that. But I became fascinated too with the the rule against perpetuities and the hearsay rule. I just thought that evidence was just an amazing concept, and I had a great professor at the time. So
Well, I would have guessed evidence because
yeah.
you're a very strong prosecutor. But not land use. No, I don't think I would have guessed that one. I always ask. I'm always interested to hear what my guests are gonna say. I always feel like I can guess it. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But no, I can definitely see evidence for sure. Mine's was contracts.
Well,
Was my
well, see,
favorite.
these were electives. These were in the second and third year of law school.
Correct.
It wasn't that grind of torts contracts
Right.
and that grind we all have to do in the first year of law
First
school,
year.
which is just
Mm-hmm.
awful. No matter what the
Mm-hmm.
course would have been in the first year of law school, it would have been awful, and it would not have
You're
been my
just trying to
favorite.
survive. I know. I
Yeah.
know. Speaking of surviving, as you know, less than 5% of lawyers in the US are Black. That number has not really changed in the last 20, 30 years, unfortunately. Did you face any discrimination while in school? Like, were you like one of a few? What law school did you go to again? And did you ever feel that way at any point?
Well, I went to Hastings College of the Law, University of California Law School in San Francisco. I had also applied to the Martin Luther King Law School, the law school at UC Davis. The Bakke decision, the Bakke case came out of UC Davis. And so it's 1976, and we're hearing from Balsa, uh, all over the country that, hey, if you're going to go to law school, now's the time to go because this time next year, you may not be able to go because of the end of affirmative action in graduate schools and the like. And so I thought about Davis because it had an undergraduate campus, but it seemed to me at the time that the percentage of African American students flunking out after the first year was something like 50%. So
Wow.
I knew I didn't want to go into that buzzsaw.
Right.
And so I chose Hastings. And I tell you, Hastings was an interesting place at the time. The first year class consisted of um, 500
Wow, that's a lot.
students
Yeah.
and 125 students in each section. And roughly 20% of those students were people of color. And even at Hastings, after I got there, I was told that, approximately half of those students of color, particularly African American, Latino students, half would flunk out.
Mm,
So it was very segregated in a way. Every everyone kept to themselves, and individual groups based on ethnicity would surround themselves with each other. So if I walked into the cafeteria at 12 o'clock, there'd be a table and there would be Chinese American students. There's another one, Japanese American students, Latinos, Blacks. Everybody would be in their own little pocket, segregated,
mhm.
from everything else. And in law school, I never felt appreciated. I never felt welcome. I never felt in law school that anybody was really on my side, other than, you know, the other students I studied with. It was a very lonely place, and you do feel we were made to feel I was made to feel as if I didn't deserve to be there, I
Mhm,
hadn't earned the right,
mhm,
that I hadn't met the standard, and that my being there was only for show
mm.
and for nothing else.
Well, I'm sure again because that percentage, that statistic hasn't changed. A lot of Black law students feel that way, and so that's why I always ask that question because sometimes people are like, oh, it's 2023, it's 2024, it's fine. I'm like, "Nah, not really. A lot has
No,
not changed, and we do have BALSA. If you're listening, BALSA is the Black Law Student Association. There are associations and things that try to help, but yeah, it
yeah,
can be a lonely feeling. But obviously you got through, you graduated, you passed the bar, you're a
Yeah.
prosecutor,
Yeah.
and in comes O.J. Simpson's case, right? Which I'm sure you knew from the very beginning would have a lot of that media stuff that you were talking about with DA Fani Willis. That's the only question I have regarding that is, would you have done anything differently?
Well,
Feel free to
um,
say no. Feel free to say nope. I would do everything completely the same. Feel free. But if there was anything you think you could change that maybe would have maybe just changed the outcome.
well, I give good radio and I give good TV. So, I help provide Perry Mason moments in TV shows that are otherwise blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
Um, uh, that's one way to put it, right? Um, you know, I was in over my head. And I was in over my head because this wasn't the kind of thing that I was really interested in.
Hmm.
And I didn't pay attention to all the media coverage. Uh, I didn't appreciate the media circus until I entered the ring. Uh,
Hmm.
and I was a country lawyer from Richmond.
Hmm.
I never wanted to be in the media. It was never part of my dream,
Hmm.
and I just wasn't prepared for it. I was
Hmm.
overwhelmed by it and undermined by it. And when you say, would I have done anything different if I knew at the beginning what I know today, I never ever would have gotten involved.
Wow.
That's the thing I would have done different. It just
Well, you know
changed the
what?
trajectory of
For
my
better
life.
or worse, it's still a part of your legacy, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I know you're like, "Ugh, I don't want to talk about this because I was like, I'm only going to hit him with maybe one question about OJ. I'm sure he's so sick of talking about OJ. But no, it's a part of your legacy for better or worse. I mean, I don't think, regardless of the outcome, right? Because we can't predict outcomes of any case, no matter how well you tried, or even if you paid attention to everything in the media. I think attorneys, if you can stand on, you did everything you were supposed to do. You did the best that you could do. I mean, that's really all you can stand on at the end of the day. Yeah, it sucks to lose. Nobody wants to lose, right? Especially on such a high profile platform. And I think this is what you were kind of speaking to with DA Fannie Willis. But yeah, celebrity definitely plays a part. The minute it's any even if it's celebrity adjacent, the case literally takes on a new thing. Even
yeah,
Young Thug with YSL in Atlanta, you have Tory Lanez with California with Megan the Stallion. All
yeah,
these cases turned into circuses, not even really about what happened because of the individuals involved. But something that did come out of the case, Judge Ito, who presided over the O.J. Simpson case with you, he is backing you
yeah.
as the seat that you're running for now. Tell us more about the seat you're running for, why you're running for it, and like maybe what a voter should know about your platform and perhaps why they should even vote for you.
Well, I think, that first of all, they should vote for me because of my experience. I mean, I passed the bar, first try, in
Hmm.
December of 1980. And I've spent 16 years as a prosecutor, more than 25 years as a civil rights attorney, and I've spent 5 years as a law professor, 4 as a full-time associate professor of law. I've been teaching criminal law and administration of justice classes at Santa Monica Community College for the last 6.5 years.
Hmm.
So, I've sent people to prison for murder, and I've gotten people out of prison for murder. I have
Hmm.
been on both sides of the courtroom, and in between all of that, I've studied the law intently. No other candidate running for the court this election season has anything close to the experience that I have.
Hmm.
And with experience comes wisdom, I think. I've seen the law evolve over the past 40 years. I was here before the three strikes law came into effect. I know what LA looked like before. I know what it looks like now. I think I know what kinds of judges are needed right now because we're in this place where there's chaos in the law. There is a crisis in the criminal law in California, I think, and particularly in Los Angeles. Are we going to go forward with the reforms or not? If we are, we need judges who believe in reform, who are progressive. I believe in reform. and
Mhm.
I'm progressive. At the same time, I'm not an idiot. I've watched the last 44 years in terms of what has happened. I've seen crime. I've seen some of the most violent, horrific things one human being can do to another. I have an understanding of what a case is worth and how a defendant ought to be sentenced.
Mhm.
Uh, I've always had a sensitivity to uh, criminal defendants who appear in court who are clearly experiencing some type of psychiatric issue or mental health issue. I've seen the veterans come in, and I in drug court, and I applaud those things. I think we need to expand even further. You know, I've seen defendants and represented some clients who came through the foster care system.
Mhm. Mhm.
That is a whole different kind of trauma.
Mhm.
And it seemed like almost every time I ran into a case involving a young woman, for instance, for prostitution or drug possession, suffering from addiction, so many times in talking to that person, I found out that they had come through foster care.
Mhm.
I think that there are a whole lot of other people, other groups that need to be paid attention to
Mhm.
in the court system. And I want to do that. I want to help expand the current judicial model to include social workers, psychiatric workers, and give people an opportunity when possible to rehabilitate themselves, to take advantage of social services. Um, I mean, we see what happens when folks don't get what they need to adjust and to survive and to function, in this society, in concurrent society. And what we see is we see them in jail. And I want to stop this prison pipeline.
Mhm.
Everybody shouldn't go to prison. I mean, I existed in this criminal justice system where if you had a strike from 10 years ago, but now you were in possession of a single rock of cocaine because you were addicted, the district attorney was demanding that you do 32 months in prison. That was the base sentence, 32 months, and serve 80% of the 32 months. That's the criminal justice system that we are evolving from. And I'm not talking about 20 years ago. I'm talking about 6 or 7, 5 or 6. We've got to get beyond that.
Mhm.
Um, the criminal justice system shouldn't just be about punishment. It also has to be about um, uh, 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 rehabilitation, and at the same time, somebody asked me, well, you say, Darden, you want to follow reform, you're progressive, but what about the old stuff? Well, there are elements of the old way we used to do things that have to come with us into
Mhm.
the future, and that includes community safety. We have to be aware of community safety, and we have to give victims an opportunity to be heard. And
Mhm.
these are the things that I believe in, and these are the things that I hope and expect will be focused on and implemented in my courtroom. Uh, Now, there are some folks that need to go. You got to go. You got to go.
Yeah, look, some people need to sit down for a little bit. Well, that's a good
Yeah.
segue to a follow-up question, and then I only have maybe one or two more questions for you. What are your thoughts on that? Even if somebody did it, right? Because you've been a defense attorney, so it's beyond the big guilty or not guilty. That everyone is still entitled to a good defense, even if they did it. And I know some people can't really wrap their mind around that.
Yeah.
Um, what does that mean to you that they still are entitled to a defense, even if they did it?
Well, I mean, this is all. It's all in the Constitution. It's
Hmm.
all wrapped up
Hmm.
in the Constitution. And you study criminal law and you study criminal procedure, and you read about the Scottsboro case, and you read about these 9 black teenagers in 1931 or so who have a fight with some white teenagers, and the sheriff comes, and then 2 white girls say, "Hey," and they raped us too. And these kids are all arrested. They're ages 12 to 19. They're in Alabama, Scottsboro, Alabama. The Klan's got the jail surrounded. The National Guard has to be called out to save these kids from being lynched and taken from the jail. And and the kids are arraigned on rape, which carries a life sentence in Alabama at the time. And the trial is set for 6 days later. And what happens 6 days later? Nobody shows up.
Mm.
No local attorney, no attorney, in Alabama at that point will represent these defendants, these young black kids. And finally, a lawyer shows up from another state, Tennessee, I think, and he's a real estate lawyer. Then an older lawyer, probably old like me, shows up, and he hadn't tried a case in decades. And they show up to try to defend these boys who all get convicted. Cases are overturned in the Supreme Court because ineffective assistance of counsel. I mean, you got two lawyers represent 9 defendants, and the lawyers on the first day said, "Judge, I just met my client." The judge said, "We're putting the jury in the box." But the point being, historically, we have been deprived of our right to counsel, of our right to a vigorous defense, to our constitutional rights. And for me, um, I'm a true believer. I am a true believer in due process. And to me, I don't think I'd sleep at night if I knew that there was someone sitting in a cell somewhere, not represented because their guilt had already been determined, even before the jury was put in the box. People criticize me about the people that I've represented or even prosecuted. And, OJ had a right to a vigorous defense and the best counsel he could get. And so does everybody else.
Yes,
So does
we know
everybody else.
about the Nipsey Hussle shooter. At one point, you were representing him, and obviously, you decided, death threats aren't worth it. But even him, right?
Well,
Everyone is entitled to a defense and a lawyer, even if they're pleading guilty. They still need a lawyer. And I
they
think
are.
people missed that point. I think they were so passionate about who was killed, they forgot the point that, like, well, he still has the right to walk in here with an attorney. That doesn't change that constitutional right. So,
And
it's
let
just
me,
a different way of looking at it.
yeah, and let me say something to you about that, if I can,
Sure.
that I've never really said in public before. No, I'd gone to see Eric Holder the night before he went to court. I decided not to take the case. When he appeared in court that afternoon, the following day for arraignment, I was at the Fox Hills Mall charging my Tesla. And I got a call from the court and they said, "Why aren't you here?" And I said, "I'm not retained." And the judge got on the phone and said, "Well, he says you're his lawyer." And I said, "Well, I'm not retained." And the judge basically asked me to do a favor, appear in court, arraign the defendant, and that, I could get off the case. And, once the public defender was up and ready to take it over. And so I did that favor, drove down there, I appeared in court, I entered a plea of not guilty, and all hell broke loose. And then
Yeah, I know.
I made a few other appearances after that. But I got to a point where I'd been threatened so much, and I read all the vitriol and all the on the internet, and it was a green light on me and a green light on him. I mean, I got to a point where now it went beyond me just doing the judge a favor. Now it became, for me, a personal and professional issue. It became a constitutional question. Does this guy get a trial? Does he get a lawyer? Is he only going to be allowed to be defended by white lawyers?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
you know,
Right.
we as a community need to protect this right. This right is more important to us, perhaps, historically than many others, than few others. We're the ones who are always the victims when criminal defendants are denied good lawyers. And you see cases all the time, death penalty cases. Your Honor, my lawyer slept through half the trial. And the U.S. Supreme Court says, too bad,
Yeah.
right? Too bad. Uh, you know, um, you know,
No,
I,
for sure. For
I,
sure.
I
No,
just think, I just
I
think it's
hear your
incredible.
sentiment. I hear your
It
sentiment
just,
for sure.
y'all need to stop hating on me about
You
because,
hear that? If you're listening,
yeah,
don't
yeah,
hate on him for all his work. Well, here's my
yeah,
final question to you.
sure,
What do
sure.
you want to be remembered for?
Wow. I don't know that I want to be remembered by anyone except the people I love and the people that love me. Um,
Uh-huh. But
I
what do you
never,
want them to remember you for? I know you have a daughter that's in law school. I know a
yeah,
couple of
yes, I
things
do.
about you. So what do you
Okay.
let's forget the public. Let's
Mhm.
let's say your loved ones, the people that love you the most. What do you want to be known for?
Well, When my father died about 5 years ago, one of the last conversations I had with him, he said to me on his deathbed, um, as a father, did I do okay?
Mhm.
What he asked me. He said, before I answered, he said, because I know I wasn't right all the time, but I did the best I could. And I hope my children remember me uh, as having done the best that I could under the circumstances, because I have 5 kids and they're all highly intelligent and they're all beautiful, brown skinned human beings who are just so intelligent and just so worthy of all the good things life can bring. I just hope that I'm remembered by them as a loving father who did the best he could.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, but that is the best way to wrap up this interview. Thank you so much for joining the Black Lawyers Podcast. We hope to have you on in the future, perhaps as the sitting judge. You can
Perhaps.
find out more information about his campaign. What is your website?
Christopher Darden, FOR Judge.com. Christopher Darden for Judge.
Great. Thank you so much, Christopher, Attorney Darden, and we wish you well. Thank you for taking the time to interview with us.